2020 Toyota Corolla front wheel bearing replacement. This is on the passenger side. It's a bolt-on style, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So first, you want to get your car jacked up. You want to get a 21mm socket and go ahead and get your wheel off. 21mm on the lug nuts. Go ahead and get these off. Obviously, don't lose these. We're gonna reuse them to get them back on the wheel. So once these are off, we're going to go ahead and set the tire to the side. Get that out the way. Alright, so we got to take the axle nut off, the rotor, the caliper. Basically, this wheel bearing is held in by 3 bolts. This one right here, and there's one on top, and then one over here where my finger is. 3 bolts, and one on top. It's actually, for a wheel bearing, it's pretty easy. So we're going to go ahead and take this brake assembly apart, starting with this 14mm caliper bolt. I'm going to flip this up, pull it out, pull my pads out, and then get my caliper bracket off and my rotor off, and that should give us plenty of room to work. So again, there's a 14mm. Go ahead and get our bottom caliper bolt off. Save this. Once this is off, I can kind of just lift this up and then push it straight backwards, and then put this, I hang it over the steering knuckle to keep it out of the way and keep it supported. Then I can get my pads out of here. That's the inner pad. Go ahead and set these to the side. This is my outer pad. Once my pads are out, I'll get my caliper bracket off. It's a 17mm. Go ahead and get these off. There's one. Get my top one out. Alright. Now once you get this other one out, the caliper bracket's going to fall. Alright, so once this is off, I can remove my caliper bracket, set this to the side. Alright, save all these things. I put them to the side, out the way. Slide the rotor off. You can remove the rotor. If it's stuck, you have these 2 holes right here. You can run a bolt through and it'll push it off the hub. Also, you can put your lug nut on and then hit it from the back with a rubber mallet. It's got to be a rubber one though. And then this should knock loose. So once this is off, here's our axle nut. And then here's where the wheel bearing is held into place by the 3 bolts. They're just right there and there and there. They go in from the back. So I got to get this axle nut off. And then once that's off, I can take the bolts out and then pull this wheel bearing off. I'm using some penetrate. I'm going to spray this on here to help this axle nut come off and to kind of degrade any rust that's on here. I also like to just kind of take a wire brush. This is a copper one, but a wire brush is good too. Just kind of gently clean those threads out. It's a 30mm axle nut. It's like this star one. I forget what it's called. It's like a 24 point, I believe. You can correct me in the comments, but it goes on here. And before you do that though, you got to hit up this knockdown spot. There's a spot that's knocked down to help it stay in place. You got to get a punch and hammer it in, and very carefully. Just enough to where the axle nut will come off and not shred the threads. It's easy to mess up the threads on these axles, and then you got a can of worms going. So once that's lifted up enough, I was able to use my impact gun and just kind of take it off. And so once that was off, I took a rubber mallet and tapped the end of this axle. It's got to be a rubber mallet. If you use an actual hammer, it'll mushroom the top of that. So I hit it. It didn't take that long, and then it just kind of came loose. So this kind of loose like this, I'm able to push it out a little bit and have more access to the bolts on the back. If it doesn't come loose for you, I still think you could get to the bolts. I took a paint pen though to mark where my backing plate is and how it's orientated, like that. Just sometimes for whatever reason, I always forget how to put the backing plate back on, even though it's super simple. 19mm wrench, 19mm deep socket for the wheel bearing. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these off. The top one is what the socket's needed for, and then the bottom 2 you can get with a wrench. I have my my gear wrench on here. The ratchet side wasn't able to reach on there, but the open end was. So just, you know, this video was made in 2022. These bolts weren't even that bad to get off. If you're doing this 10-15 years from now, then these are probably going to be more stubborn to get out. But either way, you can get these out. All right, so once these are off, I just kind of wiggled and pulled this forward. Again, if it's, 5-10 years old, this might be more stubborn to pull off. Once I got it off, I was able to remove my dust shield. And I forgot to mention to get this wheel speed sensor out. I pulled mine out. It didn't damage mine pulling it out, but I would recommend removing this before you pull the wheel bearing out. So I got my new one here. I matched it up. Here's my part number. This is from the Toyota dealer. And you can get these aftermarket. You could definitely get these aftermarket for probably half the price, but this is a factory one. And I'm going to go ahead and just put it in. It's basically reversal of how it came off. So basically, put your backing plate on with the wheel bearing, and then once that's in, just go ahead and run our bolts back in. The bolts had red Loctite on them, so you might want to put that on it when you go back on. So red Loctite on the bolts, and then we'll put them back in. I went ahead and tightened mine off camera. And for the rest of this video, I'm just going to kind of breeze through it since we already got the hard part done. I got a new axle nut. Always get a new one. And when you put this on, just put it on. I would recommend lubing up the threads a little bit. I use my gun to put mine on. I had to use a drive to knock this nut back down. So it'll bend down and it'll kind of lock it in place. This is the drive I actually used to do it. It's nice and flat, so it knocks it down. And I'll try to get a good close look. Basically, when it's knocked down into that hole, it's kind of like a lock. It won't move over time. So once I got that all in, I got my bolts in, everything. It's everything just reverse procedure pretty much. We're going to start with our wheel speed sensor, our rotor, then your caliper bracket, then your caliper and your pads back in. Put your caliper on, and then your caliper bolt. And that's it, guys. Just got to get your wheel back on. So thanks for watching. I hope this video helped you out. Please subscribe, and I'll see you next video.